So I'm going to review the second week of the so-called Wednesday Night Wars between AEW's Dynamite and NXT, which is WWE's developmental brand. AEW is on TNT and NXT is on USA Network. I did the review of week 1 last week. So now, just like last week, I'm gonna start off with AEW Dynamite. So starting the show, AEW Dynamite is in week 2 on TNT. The attendance is about 6,000 in Boston, Massachusetts. The show starts off with a tag team title tournament match. It's a Private Party introduced as weighing in at 24 ounces of vodka cranberry, which WWE can't really reference alcohol too heavily. They're facing the Young Bucks, who helped bring them up in the industry. I thought this was a very good match. Private Party getting the shocking upset victory over the Young Bucks, with Mark Quinn getting the victory roll on Matt Jackson. Definitely a lot of high-flying action, as you would expect from these two teams going up against each other. It's just a little much when Private Party seems to be getting beat up too badly to win the match. Even Isaiah Cassidy got powerbombed on the ramp and had to sell his back pain for the rest of the match, while his partner Mark Quinn was getting the punishment in the ring until the eventual hot tag. After the match, it's a little odd with a picture-in-picture commercial when there's really nothing to be shown until the next segment. The next segment is Chris Jericho coming out with the new faction that he seemingly made at the end of last week's show. Jake Hager is standing with his hands behind his back, stone-faced the entire time. Jericho delivers an amazing promo that puts over his group that he now dubs the Inner Circle. Not really a fan of this name, but okay. The group has Sammy Guevara as the young upstart, Santana and Ortiz as a tag team of quote-unquote pitbulls, and Hager as the muscle. He even killed the We the People chants by saying that it was bad creative that came up with it. An obvious dig at WWE's creative team and drawing the proverbial line in the sand that differentiates both promotions. So the next match is Jimmy Havoc versus Darby Allin, with Jimmy Havoc having a pre-match video. This match is for a shot at Chris Jericho's AEW Championship next week. As soon as Darby Allin's grunge theme hits, you notice that the arena erupts. This was actually a non-hardcore match by a couple of wrestlers who are known for hardcore wrestling. I thought this was a decent match. There was a commercial in the middle that broke up the flow. The coffin drop that Allin does is an innovative finisher, even though it does look simplistic. Next is a female tag team match. Rio and Britt Baker, DMD, versus Bea Priestley and Emi Sakura. The dynamic was strange because Priestley seems like a heel, but Sakura is wrestling more like a babyface. The fans seem confused by Sakura trying to get fan support. Baker wins with her version of the Regal stretch with the mandible claw added in. The fans popped for the finisher, but didn't seem to like the match as a whole. I didn't particularly like it myself either. The match, I mean, not the finisher. I thought the hold was actually really good. A short interview with the best friend, and now it's Shawn Spears with Tully Blanchard against Jon Moxley. I'm wondering how long Spears is going to use that chair for his gimmick. when he comes out. And this match has Pac on commentary, and he looks very angry. Pac is angry because he was overlooked for the championship, considering he is 2-0 with victories over impressive competition like Adam Page and Kenny Omega. He spent a lot of time outside of the ring. Tully Blanchard interferes behind the referee's back, and Shawn Spears eventually hits a Death Valley driver on the outside as it cuts to the picture-in-picture commercial. Spears controls the action during this portion, but Moxley eventually gets back into the match. Moxley reverses a Death Valley driver attempt, it looked like, into his double arm DDT he calls the Paradigm Shift, and he gets the 3 count. This was a solid match, more of a WWE style affair, to be honest, but still pretty solid. Kenny Omega then comes out on the stage with a barbed wire broom and a bat with barbed wire around it as well. He throws the bat to Moxley as they tease that they'll start fighting with their weapons, but Pac attacks Omega and leaves. Moxley, out of respect and a sense of honor, leaves as well instead of attacking a downed Omega. The main event is next after the commercial break. Dustin Rhodes and Hangman Page versus Sammy Guevara and Jericho, with Jake Hager on the outside. A good reception for Dustin Rhodes. Hager is definitely going to interfere at some point. Jericho comes in and tags out straight away to get some heat, but Rhodes just goes after him to the outside. Guevara tries to sneak in an attack from the apron, but Rhodes was ready for it. Rhodes and Page are controlling the action really well for the early portion of the match, but the Inner Circle take over as it hits the commercial. After Dustin gets the hot tag, he eventually goes off the top and hits a turning cross body. Not used to seeing top rope moves from him. The good guys look like they're on their way to winning the match, but Jake Hager interferes like I called against Adam Page outside the ring. And then in the inside of the ring, he hits Dustin Rhodes with a clothesline, leading to Jericho hitting the Judas effect for the 3 count. So after the match, the trio attack Rhodes, but Hangman helps and then ends up brawling with Hager to the back while Dustin is getting double teamed in the ring. The lights go out and then they come back on, and it's Dustin's brother Cody who takes out Guevara, but then when he's about to go after Jericho, Santana Ortiz come to aid Jericho as 3 of them beat down on him. At this point, MJF then comes out with a chair, supposedly to help his friend Cody. MJF, other than his friendship with Cody, is a full-blown heel, so the fans are being teased and MJF turn here. But MJF attacks the heels and the fans are just completely unglued. It sounds like the roof is about to come off the place. MJF gets taken down by Jericho, and the Inner Circle now outnumber the faces 4-3 as they lay a beating on the trio. The Young Bucks come out to help, and they clear the Inner Circle from the ring. As the heels are outside, Darby Allin comes on a skateboard down the ramp to hit Jericho. Jericho then talks smack to end the show with the babyfaces on top, as opposed to last week with the heels on top. I thought the match was good, and this end segment, to me, was a tad overbooked. I thought there were too many babyfaces that ended up coming out. Either Darby Allin or the Young Bucks didn't need to be there. And so now moving on to NXT. So starting off on NXT, just a recap of last week to start the show. Back at Full Sail, just like last week. Lio Rush versus Drew Gulak for the Cruiserweight Championship is the first match. Gulak hits the Cyclone Crash near the ropes, and for obvious reasons, hooks the inside leg like no wrestlers usually do, so that Lio Rush can get his foot on the rope. It's a little too obvious what they're doing here. So another point in the match, Lio Rush first hits a splash with a bit of a pump, not enough for me to consider it a frog splash. Then the come up stunner and wins the Cruiserweight Championship with his version of the lowdown called the Final Hour for the 3 count. Thought this was a pretty good match. I like the finish and it's a great moment for Rush. It would have been better if they didn't give away the foot on the rope. I also felt like Gulak's offense wasn't all that great either, but they worked the match well regardless of that. It then cuts to both Kushida and Walter doing warm-ups backstage, making their main event seem like a big fight. I like this, especially with how much Walter is into it. It's an interesting dynamic in the next match between Rhea Ripley and Aaliyah. Ripley is quite an imposing figure, wearing all black, while Aaliyah is small and slender, wearing yellow. This is basically a squash match that made Ripley look like $1,000,000. Ripley finishes the match with this wild submission that would take too long to describe. She basically spins Aaliyah around and does a sit-out facebuster while still in the hold and makes her tap. Ripley gets a microphone and says that she's coming for Shayna Baszler and should get a shot because she was never pinned or submitted by Baszler, unlike everyone else Baszler's faced. Breezango come out as men at work for the next match. Beth Phoenix claiming they're good at plumbing. I don't know what's going on with their commentary. It's supposed to be Everlast coming out as their music plays, but Jackson Riker pulls the unconscious team out and the Forgotten Sons are competing instead, with Riker outside the ring. The Forgotten Sons win a decent match with interference from Riker. The match wasn't too long, but it was decent for what it was. The next match is supposed to be Cameron Grimes versus Boa. Well, the match does happen, it just ends really quickly after the bell rings and Cameron Grimes just hits his finisher. Killian Dane came out to the ring and I guess it was supposed to be a distraction because the commentary team is trying really hard to sell that. It didn't look good because Boa looked for a split second, had enough wherewithal to go forward, and then got hit by Cameron Grimes. This was poorly executed. Dane then attacks Boa to make him look more menacing. The next match is Roderick Strong, who's the North American champion, against Isaiah Scott. Mauro Ranallo is getting a bit ridiculous with the pop culture references here. It's a good match. I just didn't like that Strong needed a bit of a distraction from the Undisputed Era to win, although it wasn't much. I feel that he needs to be seen as more of a legit champion. After the match, Adam Cole touts how great the Undisputed Era are. Velveteen Dream interrupts from the balcony and insults the man who took the North American Championship from him, Roderick Strong, by basically showing a picture of him naked on the Tron, implying that he has a small penis. Although I find this type of insult childish, Strong sells it really well that Dream's getting under his skin. Then Tommaso Ciampa comes to the ring with weapons, which forces the Undisputed Era to retreat outside. Ciampa proclaims Daddy's home to the NXT Championship he never lost, the belt that's on Adam Cole's shoulder. Bianca Belair versus Dakota Kai in the next match. And this was another good match with Belair winning with the KOD. Belair goes on the mic and believes she's the one who will dethrone Shayna Baszler because she's the EST of NXT. I felt that this promo was weaker than the one that Rhea Ripley gave. So now we're at the main event. Kushida versus Walter, who is the NXT UK champion. This feels like an epic clash since both men are undefeated. So to start off, Walter's kind of ragdolling Kushida since obviously he has the huge size advantage. Kushida teases Walter after he gains the advantage back, and now it goes to commercial with Walter collecting himself outside. Back from the commercial, it looks like Kushida botches going off the rope and can't hit the move, and Walter just knocks him down with a big boot. This was actually done so well that it looked like that may have been a planned spot. Kushida tries going for a sunset powerbomb to the outside, but Walter hangs onto the ropes and stomps on Kushida. Kushida rolls and jumps up to the apron to give Walter a DDT to the outside. A hoverboard lock by Kushida. Walter gets out and puts on a sleeper hold, but Kushida gets to the ropes. Walter goes to the top, but Kushida meets him and flips Walter while putting him on the hoverboard lock and keeps it on when they're at the ground. Walter eventually gets the ropes. Kushida kicks out of the powerbomb, but Walter hits a lariat to win. A great match. Probably would have rated higher if the commercial didn't happen. But what's funny over the whole show is the sheer lack of picture-in-picture commercials compared to last week. I'm wondering if that's gonna be their normal format now. They were just doing that to compete with AEW for the first week. So this last bit I just want to add. The National Wrestling Alliance had their first weekly show called Powerrr with 3 R's. But I think they refer to it as a Power Hour as well, as it's an hour long. It's on their YouTube channel, and they come out with the episode every Tuesday, it looks like. They definitely brought back the retro look and feel of their old studio shows from the 80s. One thing that you notice is that these shows are very promo heavy. 3 out of the 5 matches were squashes. The NWA World Heavyweight Champion Nick Aldis seemed to channel his inner Ric Flair with his opening promo. I felt that Eli Drake made a good account of himself, taking things more seriously. I was never a fan of him in the past because he lacked a seriousness and didn't get it in regards to his character. The only thing I don't like that I've noticed in regards to promos is when they say they're real men compared to the kids in the rest of the industry. They're going to attract a certain niche that way, but it's clear that they value size and want something to cling onto to differentiate themselves. Everyone who won the squash matches came off as pretty bland to me, and that includes James Storm, who they were clearly trying to make look like a badass and make him look tough. His segments to me only succeeded in making the other guy, Josephus, look pathetic. The main event delivered with Aldis beating Tim Storm and Storm's last opportunity at the title. After the match, the interviewer asked Aldis' manager, Camille, how she was after accidentally getting hit by Aldis, and Aldis doesn't let her talk. This is how the show ended. Overall, I like the effort they're putting in to give their own distinct show. However, I do have some issues. I don't think they can rely too heavily on being a throwback because I feel that only lasts so long. That first episode of NWA Powerrr has over 400,000 views up until this point. However, I'd like to compare the 2 Wednesday night shows for the second week. NXT had 790,000 viewers, down 11% from last week when they had 890,000. And AEW had 1.14 million combined with TNT and True TV, as they were worried about an overrun from playoff baseball. They went down 19%. The glaring thing for both companies as far as the ratings drop is concerned is that the 18 to 49 demographic went down at about a third for both shows. AEW had the better ratings for the second week in a row, but it's a little bit closer, still a considerable difference. Overall, in my opinion, I felt that NXT had the better show. NXT showcased not just a lot of wrestling, but also a lot of their star talent. I can't decide which commentary team was better because AEW wasn't as sharp as last week, but NXT's crew were distracting with their side conversations. The difference between the two shows, and may lead some people to think AEW had the better show, was a furthering of storylines. NXT didn't really do that. The best thing on both shows actually stack up well against each other. I thought Chris Jericho's promo really stood out for AEW, and that the Walter versus Kushida match was great.